The grand court of the Zephyrian Empire was unlike anything humans had ever seen. Towering crystalline walls shimmered with colors that shifted with every movement of the sun, or what the aliens called the tri-solar alignment. Platforms floated in mid-air, carrying delegates from hundreds of worlds, each species more strange and majestic than the last. The air hummed with energy, a mixture of technology and alien biology. It was a place where politics, power, and prestige intertwined, and nothing escaped the careful observation of the Zephyrian elite. Among the throng of beings, humans were rare. Only a handful of humans had ever been granted access to the court, and even fewer were trusted with security duties. Captain Elena Rios was one of those rare humans. Her job was clear: protect her assigned diplomat, and by extension, represent the subtle power of humanity in a court that often looked down on the primitive species. She stood at attention near the central dais, her eyes scanning the room. The court was packed. Zephyrian officials, with their elongated limbs and iridescent skin, whispered in melodic tones. Delegates from the insectoid Kralin, the amphibious, Turili, and the towering rock-like Gravians mingled cautiously. There was a sense of tense anticipation. Today, Ambassador Zithara of the Zephyrians would deliver a historic speech, outlining a new treaty among several planetary systems. Elena had seen many things in her career: assassinations, sabotage, political unrest. But she had never seen a court like this. Here, diplomacy was not just a matter of words. It was a display of control, precision, and status. Any mistake could have consequences. Humans, despite their reputation for resilience and courage, were often considered reckless by alien standards. That perception, Elena knew, was about to be challenged. The ambassador stepped onto the floating dais, his crystalline robes catching the light. Zithara was a commanding presence, even among the majestic aliens of the court. He began to speak, in measured musical tones. The chamber fell silent, every delegate hanging on his every word. Elena kept her focus on the room, scanning for threats. Then, without warning, the impossible happened. Ambassador Zithara's knees buckled. He grasped at the edge of the dais, his voice cutting off mid-word. Gasps and shouts erupted from the crowd. Delegates stumbled back, some trying to catch him, others recoiling in shock. The Zephyrians, usually so composed, panicked. Floating platforms shook as beings hurriedly moved to assist, but no one could reach him in time. Elena was already moving. Her training kicked in automatically. She pushed through the throng, her boots clicking sharply against the smooth floor. She reached the ambassador just as he slumped fully to the ground, unconscious. "Clear the area," she commanded, her voice firm. Aliens turned to her, startled by the commanding tone of a human. Some hesitated, but the human presence carried authority that even these proud beings recognized. Slowly, the crowd parted, leaving a small space. Around the fallen ambassador, Elena knelt beside Zithara, checking his pulse and breathing. Both were faint, but steady. Relief washed over her briefly. He was alive, but something was very wrong. The collapse had not been caused by a visible attack. There were no weapons, no signs of struggle, no immediate illness. "Captain Rios," a voice called. It was one of the Zephyrian aides, a tall, translucent-skinned figure named Valara. "What happened? Is he—" "He's stable for now," Elena replied, her voice calm. "But we need to move him carefully and get medical attention immediately. There could be more to this than meets the eye." The aide hesitated. "This is unprecedented. Nothing like this has ever happened in the Grand Court." Elena didn't respond. She was already scanning the environment, looking for anything out of place. She noticed subtle traces, tiny droplets of a pale liquid near the ambassador's glass of water, a faint chemical odor in the air, almost imperceptible. Her human senses, honed through years of military and security training, picked up what others overlooked. "Everyone back," she said again, standing tall. "This is a controlled zone. Only medical and security personnel stay here." The court's panic only grew. Delegates whispered urgently, some pointing fingers. Rumors began to spread even before anyone knew the truth. Poison, one said. Dark magic, another whispered. The Tureli ambassador's eyes glowed nervously. Their species had an instinctive fear of human presence in tense situations. Elena ignored them all. She focused on the immediate problem. Zithara needed to be stabilized, and the source of the collapse had to be understood. If this was an attack, it could spark interstellar conflict. And if it was not, the embarrassment to the court, and potentially to humanity's reputation, would be severe. Medical drones floated in, scanning Zithara with alien precision. Readings appeared in shimmering holographic projections. The poor, human captain watched carefully, not fully trusting alien diagnostics. She knew that sometimes technology could miss subtle clues that humans with their adaptability and intuition could catch. After a tense moment, one of the drones spoke in a metallic, melodic voice. Subject experiencing faint neural disruption. Cause unknown. Probability of spontaneous collapse. Low. Elena frowned. Low probability. That was telling. Spontaneous collapse in a being of Zithara's strength and health was almost impossible. She glanced at the water glass again, at the droplets on the floor, at the subtle chemical trace she had smelled. It was too deliberate to be accidental. Keep him under observation, Elena said, and check everything he touched. Food, drink, anything. I want a full analysis of his environment. Now, the alien aides hesitated. Captain, this is highly irregular. I am in charge of security here, Elena interrupted firmly. And right now, my priority is keeping him alive and finding out why he collapsed. That includes you, assisting fully. There was silence for a moment. Then finally they moved, following her instructions. Some did so reluctantly, clearly struggling with the idea of a human taking command in their grand court. Elena didn't care. The truth, and Zithara's safety, mattered more than alien pride. As the drones and aides began their work, Elena stepped back and surveyed the room. The court itself was still tense, but the panic had slightly subsided. The delegates watched her, curious and wary. They had never seen a human operate with such confidence and precision in their sacred halls. Even in a room filled with centuries-old alien etiquette, human determination stood out. Elena thought about how different humans were. They did not have centuries of strict hierarchical tradition controlling every action. They relied on reasoning, observation, and quick thinking. And right now, those traits were exactly what the court needed. Minutes passed, but to Elena, it felt like hours. Finally, one of the drones emitted a soft chime. Analysis complete. Trace neurochemical detected in beverage. Unknown origin. Molecular composition similar to known human-manufactured compounds. Elena's eyes narrowed. Humans had never shared that technology with the Zephyrians, or anyone else for that matter. The implication was clear. Someone had used a rare advanced compound designed to incapacitate a species. But why target Zithara? And why here, in the center of the court? Her mind raced. This was more than an accident. This was an attempt to destabilize the court, or perhaps to assassinate the ambassador. Either way, the implications were dangerous. Keep him stable, she instructed the drones, and prepare a secure area for further investigation. No one enters without my permission. Valara looked at her, eyes wide with a mix of fear and admiration. Captain, you act as if you already know something we do not. Elena allowed, herself a small, grim smile. I don't know yet. But humans are good at noticing what others miss. And I intend to find out exactly what happened here. As she spoke, she glanced once more at the glass, at the droplets, at the subtle traces of chemical residue. In that moment, she realized this collapse was not the end. It was only the beginning. The court had been shaken, but humanity's presence here was about to make an impression the Zephyrians would not forget. Elena straightened, her posture radiating quiet confidence. She was human, and in a court full of alien power, that would make all the difference. The grand court of the Zephyrians had quieted after the sudden collapse of Ambassador Zathera, but the tension lingered like a storm waiting to break. Humans and aliens alike sensed that something serious was unfolding. The court, normally a display of control and ceremony, had become a place of uncertainty. Captain Elena Rios had taken charge of the situation. With the ambassador now stabilized in a secure medical chamber, she turned her attention to the source of the problem. Her instincts told her this was no accident. The chamber itself was unlike anything on Earth. Walls of shimmering crystal reflected holographic readouts of Zathara's vital signs. Strange medical devices hovered in midair, scanning the ambassador with precision beyond human technology. Drones moved silently, transmitting data that Elena could barely keep up with. But she knew that even advanced alien technology could miss small details that humans often noticed. She crouched beside Zathara's bed and examined the scene carefully. A half-drunk glass of water sat on a small pedestal beside him. There were tiny droplets around it on the floor, almost invisible unless you looked closely. Elena sniffed the air gently and caught a faint chemical scent, barely perceptible but definitely unusual. Poison, she muttered under her breath. One of the Zephyrian aides, Valara, watched her nervously. Captain, you cannot be sure of that. The medical drones would detect any known toxins. Elena shook her head. Not all toxins are known. This one is advanced. Its signature is subtle. It may have been designed to target a specific species, or even bypass standard detection. Valara paled at her words. You mean someone attacked him? Elena did not answer. Her mind was already working. Whoever did this had knowledge of alien biochemistry, or access to humans' advanced technology. That was dangerous. Very dangerous. Captain Rios, another voice said. Dr. Kelvin, the chief Zephyrian physician, floated forward. We have stabilized the ambassador. Vital signs are returning to normal. But there is one thing. He hesitated, his translucent form flickering slightly. We cannot determine the exact substance responsible. It is unfamiliar to us. Elena's eyes narrowed. That confirms it. This was deliberate. Dr. Kelvin floated closer to examine her more carefully. You humans, you have methods of observation that are unusual. You notice what we might overlook. Elena allowed herself a faint smile. We've had to survive on instinct and logic for a long time. Sometimes it works. With the ambassador safe for the moment, Elena turned her attention to the investigation. She started by retracing every step Zathara had taken before his collapse. Every drink, every handshake, every document he touched was a potential clue. She moved with precision, careful not to disturb evidence while noting everything the drones reported. She asked Valara to gather samples of the water, the droplets, and the pedestal itself. I need everything tested, she said. Environmental, scans, chemical analysis, even microscopic traces. I want to know what Zathara came into contact with in the last hour. Valara hesitated. Captain, our labs can do this, but you may not understand the full complexity. Elena ignored the comment. She had learned long ago that humans' greatest strength was not understanding everything. They focused on the crucial details and connected them logically. She would see what the aliens missed. The first test results came back quickly. The water showed traces of a neurochemical, unlike anything the Zephyrians had catalogued. It was faint, almost impossible to detect without sensitive equipment. Elena studied the holographic report carefully. This is human technology, she murmured. Valara's eyes widened. Human technology? But humans are primitive compared to us. How could you create such a compound? Elena shook her head. Not us. Someone used human methods or materials. That's why it's so hard for your drones to detect. Whoever did this wanted it subtle, effective, and untraceable, except to a human mind trained to spot the patterns. The room fell silent for a moment. Even the advanced Zephyrians were impressed and a little uneasy. Elena continued her investigation by examining Zathara's surroundings. She noticed subtle fingerprints on the pedestal, faint smudges on the edge of the glass and a tiny mark on the ambassador's robe that suggested someone had adjusted it hastily. They were careful, Elena said aloud, but no one is perfect. They left traces, and humans noticed them. Dr. Kelvin floated closer. Captain, your methods, they are unconventional, but effective. How do you know what to look for? Elena smiled faintly. Experience, observation, and knowing that anyone desperate enough to act against someone powerful will make mistakes. Hours passed and the investigation grew more complicated. Elena realized she was not just dealing with a medical mystery. This was political. Any accusation could spark a conflict among the court's factions. She had to be careful. Using her human training, she analyzed patterns. Certain delegates had approached the ambassador shortly before the collapse. Others had been near his drink. By cross-referencing positions, access, and behavior, she narrowed the list of potential suspects. Her mind worked like a machine. Unlike the aliens who relied heavily on protocol, humans could improvise. She noticed subtle behaviors. A Kralin delegate whose eyes flickered nervously, a Turili aide who lingered too long near the medical chamber, a Gravian's representative whose energy readings spiked suspiciously. Each detail mattered. Finally, she focused on one crucial clue: the timing. The collapse happened just after Zithara sipped from his water. Whoever contaminated it had planned the exact moment. That meant inside knowledge and access. Elena realized it could only be someone close, someone trusted. Captain, Valara said cautiously, are you suggesting this was an insider? Elena nodded. Yes. And if it is, we cannot trust appearances. Aliens are masters of ceremony and deception, but humans see patterns they ignore. That's how we survive, and why we're here. The Zephyrian court had always prided itself on control and intelligence, but Elena's methodical observation began to unsettle them. They were beginning to see that humans, though few in number, had a unique ability to cut through complexity with logic and courage. As the investigation continued, Elena requested a private meeting with Dr. Kelvin. We need to replicate the compound, she said. If we understand it, we can identify the source and prevent further incidents. Dr. Kelvin hesitated. Our labs are advanced, but I warn you, human methods are unusual. You may not follow protocol. Elena smiled faintly. I don't follow protocol. I follow reason. Together they began experiments, carefully recreating the neurochemical using controlled samples. Elena noticed things the Zephyrians missed. Small interactions between the compound and environmental factors, the subtle degradation over time, and the unusual way it affected different species. Hours turned into a long night. While the court slept uneasily, Elena's mind raced. She connected clues, eliminated possibilities, and focused on what made sense. The neurochemical was rare, advanced, and designed to incapacitate a being like Zithara. But it was not lethal. Whoever created it wanted a warning or a demonstration of power. Elena realized this was bigger than a simple attack. It was a message, and she was determined to decode it. As dawn approached, she paused to reflect. Humans were often underestimated, seen as weaker or less sophisticated. But her investigation had revealed a truth. Human ingenuity, observation, and courage were formidable tools. While aliens relied on status, hierarchy, and tradition, humans relied on reasoning, instinct, and adaptability, and that made all the difference. Finally, she spoke aloud, her voice quiet but firm. We will find who did this, and the court will know that humans do not fail when the truth is at stake. Valara watched her, a mixture of awe and fear in his eyes. Captain, the others may not appreciate your methods. Elena shook her head. They will. Soon enough, they will understand why humans survive and why they are respected, even in a court as proud as this. The investigation was only beginning. Clues were scattered, suspects hidden in plain sight, and the stakes higher than ever. But Elena Rios was human, and humans had a way of solving mysteries that no alien technology, no matter how advanced, could match. Outside the medical chamber, the grand court of the Zephyrians resumed its activity, but the tension remained. "Delegates," whispered nervously, eyes darting toward the humans. Captain Elena Rios, watching from the shadows, knew that this incident was only the first ripple in a wave that could change interstellar politics forever. The grand court of the Zephyrians had recovered outwardly from the ambassador's collapse, but the air was heavy with unease. Whispers traveled like sparks through dry brush, suspicions, fears, and hidden agendas. Captain Elena Rios knew that the challenge had only just begun. The neurochemical that had felled Zithara was a clue, but it was just the beginning. Someone powerful had orchestrated this, and their motives remained hidden. Elena began her investigation in the court's high-security laboratories. The Zephyrians prided themselves on precision and protocol, and their labs were marvels of alien engineering. Devices hovered, scanners floated, and holographic readouts streamed continuously. Yet for all the sophistication, Elena noticed what the aliens often overlooked: the small, subtle details that told a story. "Captain Rios," Dr. Kelvin said, "we have isolated the compound. It is unlike anything catalogued in Zephyrian science. Even our most advanced drones cannot fully analyze its behavior in real time." Elena studied the holographic projection. The compound's molecules shimmered oddly, reacting differently to energy fields than any known substance. It was advanced, precise, and clearly designed with a goal in mind. She nodded slowly. This was no random attack. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. They designed it to incapacitate Zithara without killing him. They wanted a demonstration. Dr. Kelvin's translucent eyes flickered. A demonstration? Against whom? And why? "That's what we're going to find out," Elena replied. Her mind was already working, connecting the small observations she had made. The faint chemical trace, the fingerprints on the pedestal, the timing of the collapse, and the subtle behavior of certain delegates. Humans saw patterns that others missed. That was her advantage. Elena began replicating the compound in the lab, carefully adjusting variables and monitoring reactions. Unlike the Zephyrians, she did not rely solely on protocols. Humans relied on intuition and reasoning, and that allowed her to notice patterns in the compound's behavior that the aliens had dismissed as anomalies. Hours passed. The Zephyrians were meticulous but slow, bound by their formal procedures. Elena moved quickly, testing, observing, and connecting the dots. Finally, she discovered a critical detail. The compound was designed to target neurological systems with precision. It affected certain species differently, but humans, with their resilient and adaptive physiology, could resist low doses. That explained why she had been able to detect it when alien drones could not. "This is clever," she muttered. Too clever for an amateur. Whoever created this has insider knowledge. Her suspicion deepened. The collapse had happened in the center of the Grand Court, under the watch of dozens of delegates. Whoever was responsible had access to both Zithara and the environment. This narrowed the list of suspects considerably. It had to be someone trusted, someone close enough to touch the ambassador without raising alarm. Elena decided to observe the court more closely. She moved among the floating platforms, blending into the background while noting the subtle behaviors of delegates. Aliens often relied on ceremony and posture to convey authority. Humans relied on observation and deduction. That difference became her advantage. She noticed a Kraylan delegate whose limbs twitched unnaturally whenever the ambassador was mentioned. A Turili aide lingered near medical drones more than necessary, hovering as if curious but careful. And a Gravian's representative, usually calm and composed, showed subtle spikes in energy readings when anyone discussed the incident. Elena cataloged every observation. In humans, these behaviors might be insignificant, but in the precise, rigid world of the Zephyrians, every deviation could reveal intent. Later, she returned to the laboratory. "Dr. Kelvin," she said, "we need to recreate the exact conditions of the collapse: timing, environment, and exposure. Only then will we understand the culprit's strategy. Kelvin's eyes widened. That is unconventional, but I will follow your lead. Together they worked. Elena's method was simple but effective. Observe, test, and adapt. She noted how the compound reacted to temperature, air pressure, and even the subtle vibrations of the floating platforms. After several attempts, they finally replicated the neurochemical's effect precisely, understanding both its purpose and its limitations. Elena smiled faintly. We can now predict behavior, and predict behavior is power. Her thoughts turned to the court. Whoever had orchestrated this was bold, perhaps overconfident. By replicating the compound, she could anticipate the next move. Humans had a saying, "Foresight often beats raw power," and she intended to prove it. The next day, Elena began questioning the staff and aides who had access to Zathara before the collapse. She used careful observation and pointed questions, noting hesitation, avoidance, and subtle gestures. Aliens often tried to hide feelings behind posture and tone, but humans were trained to see beyond appearances. Elena quickly separated nervousness, caused by fear, from nervousness caused by guilt. It became clear. Someone had indeed tampered with the ambassador's drink. But it was not random. The culprit had chosen their moment carefully, ensuring maximum impact and minimal trace. Elena compiled her findings in a holographic display. The evidence was subtle: fingerprints on the pedestal, traces of the compound in the water, unusual energy spikes near certain delegates, and inconsistencies in alibis. While the Zephyrians relied on rank and protocol, Elena relied on logic and reasoning, and it was already revealing the truth. As she worked, whispers began to spread in the court. Delegates noticed the humans observing patterns others missed. Some were uneasy. Others, like the Tureli and Kralin, were secretly impressed. Humans were not just guards, they were thinkers, observers, and problem solvers in a way the court had rarely seen. Elena knew the investigation could spark tensions. Accusing the wrong delegate could trigger interstellar conflict, but failing to act would be worse. She had to be precise. She had to act like a human, careful, observant, and unrelenting. Later, she met privately with Dr. Kelvin. "We need to narrow down suspects further," she said. "I want to track movement patterns, timing, and access." The culprit left a trail, tiny but telling. Humans notice things others dismiss. Kelvin nodded. "We will use your method. It is unconventional, but effective." Together they analyzed movement data, holographic logs, and energy readings. Elena noticed one thing that stood out. The Gravians' representative had accessed areas they should not have, lingering near the ambassador's quarters at unusual times. It was subtle, almost invisible to alien sensors, but humans were trained to notice anomalies like this. Elena made a plan. "We wait," she said. "We observe, but discreetly. The culprit will make a mistake if we are patient." Her patience was rewarded sooner than expected. The Gravians' representative returned to the lab area under the pretense of routine checks. Elena, hidden among the shadows, noticed the nervous behavior and unusual energy fluctuations. The alien tried to mask it, but humans saw patterns that aliens dismissed. Elena signaled to a small team of human guards. "Prepare for interception, but quietly. We need evidence, not confrontation yet." They moved with precision. The Gravians' representative entered the chamber, unaware that humans were watching. Elena observed carefully as the alien attempted to tamper with samples of the neurochemical, likely trying to cover their tracks. "Got you," Elena whispered. Her team stepped out, surrounding the alien quietly but decisively. The representative froze, realizing they had been caught. "What? How did you—" Elena stepped forward, calm but commanding. "Humans notice things others miss. You made a mistake. Your actions are recorded, and we have the evidence." The court would soon hear the truth. Humans had solved the mystery not with brute force, but with observation, reasoning, and patience. Traits the Zephyrians admired but rarely understood. Elena looked at the captured alien and said quietly, "This is only the beginning. The collapse was a warning and we will find out why. But humans do not fail when it comes to truth." The Gravian's representative's eyes widened with fear and realization. The humans were not just guards. They were a force to be reckoned with. And in a court where deception and power ruled, that was a dangerous thing to underestimate. Outside the lab, the court continued its day, unaware that a human had just uncovered a conspiracy that could shake the Empire. Elena knew the investigation would continue, but she also knew one truth. Humans were unpredictable, clever, and unyielding. And that gave them an advantage no alien technology could match. The Grand Court of the Zephyrians had never been so tense. Even the most composed delegates now moved with a hint of suspicion in every step. Whispers of the ambassador's collapse had grown into hushed conversations about betrayal, sabotage, and hidden agendas. Captain Elena Rios knew that the situation could erupt into chaos at any moment. The Gravian's representative she had caught meddling with the neurochemical was only one piece of the puzzle. Someone, somewhere, had orchestrated a carefully planned attack on the very heart of the court. Elena moved through the court quietly, her eyes scanning the crowd. Even though she was human, and considered by many alien standards fragile, her presence commanded attention. Delegates instinctively gave her space, a mixture of respect and caution. Humans had a way of standing firm in situations where others faltered. She stopped near a group of Zephyrian aides and whispered, "We need to secure all labs, chambers, and access points. No one leaves the court without authorization. Something tells me there may be accomplices." The aides nodded, quickly moving to follow her instructions. Elena knew that the longer the court operated under uncertainty, the greater the risk of panic, or worse, violence. Humans were known for taking initiative in crises, and now her skills were proving essential. Meanwhile, the Gravian's representative sat in a small holding chamber, visibly nervous. Despite their natural composure and strength, the alien's body trembled with anxiety. Elena approached with careful, controlled steps. "You know why you're here," she said calmly. The alien looked up, defiance quickly replaced by fear. I was only following orders. It was not my plan." Elena's eyes narrowed. "Following orders is not an excuse when lives are at stake. You endangered an ambassador and risked war. Humans do not forgive negligence when the truth is clear." The alien shifted uncomfortably, realizing that resistance was futile. Humans had patience, determination, and a methodical approach that left little room for deception. Elena's reputation as a problem solver preceded her, and even the Gravians, known for their stoicism, sensed the weight of human resolve. Back in the main hall, the court began to divide. Allegiances shifted subtly. Delegates whispered about loyalty and betrayal. Some factions subtly accused others, while the Gravians' representatives' capture added fuel to the fire. Elena observed everything quietly, noting patterns, contradictions, and behaviors that the aliens themselves overlooked. She knew she needed more than evidence. She needed a demonstration. The court had to see that humans could detect deception and protect order in ways no alien technology could. "Captain Rios," Dr. Kelvin said softly, joining her. "We can present the evidence now. But are you sure? The court may react unpredictably." Elena nodded. "We have to. If we wait too long, someone else may act. Humans are decisive. We act when the truth is clear." The council chamber was massive, with floating platforms and shimmering walls that reflected hundreds of delegates' faces. Elena stepped forward, flanked by a few human guards. The Gravian's representative was brought into the chamber under secure supervision. Every eye in the room turned toward the humans, a rare moment where they commanded attention without intimidation or ceremony. Elena's voice rang out clearly. "Delegates of the Grand Court, what you witnessed was not an accident. Ambassador Zethara's collapse was caused by a neurochemical designed to incapacitate him. It was deliberate, and it was subtle, designed to avoid detection except by careful observation and reasoning." Gasps rippled through the court. Some delegates whispered to one another, trying to process the accusation. Humans rarely spoke with such clarity and authority in alien politics. Elena continued. We have analyzed the compound, tracked access points, and observed behaviors. The evidence points directly to the Gravians' representative. They tampered with the ambassador's drink and attempted to manipulate the samples to cover their tracks. We caught them in the act of deception. The Gravians' representative tried to speak, but Elena's calm, commanding presence silenced them. Your excuses do not change the facts. Humans notice details that others ignore. Actions speak louder than rank or ceremony. And the truth is clear. Several delegates murmured in shock. The Gravians, proud and disciplined, had not expected a human to uncover such a scheme. The Tureli whispered among themselves, impressed by Elena's methodical logic. Even the Kralin, usually dismissive of humans, watched with wary respect. Elena turned to the holding chamber's monitors. We can demonstrate the replication of the compound and show exactly how it works. This is the proof. No speculation, no accusations without evidence. Dr. Kelvin activated the holographic displays. Floating molecular models of the neurochemical appeared in the air, showing how it reacted under various conditions. The court leaned in, transfixed. Elena explained clearly, step by step, how the compound was introduced, why it affected Zathara, and how it could have caused a major crisis if undetected. The plan was clever, Elena said, but not perfect. Every action leaves a trace. Humans see what others ignore. This is why the culprit was caught. Silence fell over the chamber. Then, slowly, delegates began to murmur among themselves. Some nodded in understanding. Others looked uneasy, realizing that human ingenuity had not just solved a problem, it had exposed weaknesses in their own court. The Gravians' representatives' eyes darted around the chamber, panic growing. They realized that human observation was relentless, precise, and unyielding. Unlike the aliens, humans did not rely on hierarchy, ritual, or intimidation. They relied on reasoning, logic, and courage. And that combination was deadly effective. Elena stepped forward again. The investigation is not complete. We will identify all involved parties, ensure the safety of the ambassador, and prevent further attempts. But one lesson is clear. Humans are capable of solving problems that seem impossible. Do not underestimate our ability to reason, observe, and act. Some delegates shifted uneasily. They had always looked down on humans as simple, impulsive creatures. But now they had to reconsider. Humans had not only solved a mystery, but also navigated alien deception and political complexity with precision. The court's tension began to ease slightly. Delegates who had whispered accusations now paused, considering the evidence. The Gravians' representative was led away in secure custody, their pride shattered, but alive. Elena's calm authority and reasoning had prevented bloodshed, restored order, and revealed the truth. Valara approached her quietly. Captain, you have done something remarkable. The court will not forget this. Elena shook her head. It's not about being remembered. It's about solving the problem. Humans do what must be done no matter the risk. That's why we survive. Even as the court began to resume its functions, Elena remained vigilant. She knew that this incident was only part of a larger scheme. The neurochemical attack had been a warning, a test, and perhaps a signal of greater plans. Humans had solved one puzzle, but the larger game was still in play. Outside the chamber, the Grand Court resumed its ceremonial functions, but the balance had shifted. Humans were no longer seen as weak or inconsequential. Their presence, their reasoning, and their courage had proven their value. Delegates now watched them with a mix of respect, caution, and curiosity. Elena walked through the hallways observing the court. Patterns were emerging, alliances shifting subtly. Every movement, every whispered conversation could reveal a new clue. And she knew that the next step would require even greater attention, patience, and intelligence. She paused near the ambassador's chamber and looked at Zathara, now resting peacefully. We have stopped one threat, she murmured. But others may come. Humans are ready. We see what others cannot. And we do what is necessary. In the shadows, the Gravians' representatives' associates whispered urgently. They realized that humans were a force unlike any they had faced. Clever, patient, and relentless, humans could uncover truths and act decisively in ways the aliens could not anticipate. Elena's eyes narrowed. She knew the investigation would continue. There were more questions, more secrets, and perhaps more attempts to destabilize the court. But one thing was certain. Humans were no longer just observers. They were participants, and their ingenuity and courage would shape events in ways the aliens had never imagined. The court was chaotic, but order had been restored, not through fear, not through technology, but through reasoning, observation, and human determination. And that was a lesson the Zephyrians would not soon forget. Elena's calm gaze swept across the chamber. She was ready for whatever came next. Humans survived and thrived because they acted when others hesitated. And the Grand Court, for all its sophistication, had just learned that lesson the hard way. The Grand Court of the Zephyrians had returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the tension still lingered like a shadow over the crystal halls. Captain Elena Rios walked through the chambers with a quiet confidence. Humans had uncovered the neurochemical plot, revealed the Gravians' representatives' involvement, and stabilized the ambassador. But Elena knew the story was not yet finished. There were still questions to answer, motives to uncover, and justice to be served. The morning sunlight, or what passed for sunlight in the court, glimmered off the crystalline walls as Elena entered the council chamber. Delegates from dozens of star systems had assembled once more. Some were still uneasy, wary of the human captain who had so decisively altered the course of the investigation. Others watched her with newfound respect. Humans, it seemed, could be more than guards. They could be problem solvers, strategists, and arbiters of truth. Ambassador Zathara, now fully recovered, rose from his secure chamber. His crystalline robes shimmered as he approached the dais, his voice steady and commanding. Delegates of the Grand Court, the recent events have shaken us. But thanks to the decisive actions of Captain Elena Rios and the human security team, we have uncovered the truth. The neurochemical attack was deliberate, and those responsible have been apprehended. A murmur of astonishment passed through the chamber. No one had expected a human to unravel such a complex plot in a court dominated by centuries of alien tradition. Elena stood at attention beside the ambassador, her calm presence a silent testament to human competence. The Gravians' representative was brought forward under secure supervision. Their pride had been shattered, and their composure betrayed by nervous energy. Elena observed closely. The alien had no choice but to face the evidence. Humans were patient, methodical, and relentless, and the Gravians' representative had realized too late that their schemes were transparent to human reasoning. Captain Rios, Zathara continued, has demonstrated the power of observation, logic, and courage. She has shown that humans are capable of solving problems that even the most advanced alien technology may miss. This is a lesson we should all take to heart. Helena said nothing. She did not need accolades. For humans, action and resolution mattered more than recognition. Still, she noted the subtle change in the court's atmosphere. Where there had been skepticism and condescension, now there was cautious respect. Humans had earned it through skill and intellect. The council proceeded with the formal inquiry into the plot. Elena presented the evidence she had gathered. The molecular analysis of the neurochemical, the access logs, the behavioral anomalies, and the replication experiments she had conducted with Dr. Kelvin. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing step-by-step how the compound had been administered and how it had affected Zathara. The court listened in rapt silence. Aliens who prided themselves on precision and analysis were forced to confront the fact that a human had solved a crisis they had struggled to understand. The Tureli delegates whispered among themselves, impressed by the clarity and reasoning displayed. Even the Kralin, usually dismissive of humans, nodded subtly. Elena had anticipated the reaction. Humans were often underestimated, but their strength lay not in sheer power or tradition, but in observation, intuition, and quick reasoning. The court, she realized, was beginning to see what humans had known all along. Courage combined with intelligence could challenge even the most sophisticated adversaries. Finally, the Gravian's representative was allowed to speak. Their voice trembled, both with fear and recognition of defeat. I was following orders. It was not my plan. I did what I was told. Elena stepped forward. Following orders does not excuse the endangerment of others. You chose to participate. You acted against life, against stability, and against truth. Humans are responsible for our actions, and we accept the consequences. You must do the same. The chamber fell silent. The alien had no rebuttal. Humans did not rely on rhetoric or manipulation. They relied on clarity, observation, and principle. Elena's words resonated because they were grounded in fact and reason, not fear or intimidation. The court convened to vote on the consequences. Elena watched quietly as delegates debated. Some argued for strict punishment, citing the attempt to destabilize the court. Others acknowledged the mitigating factor that the representative had acted under orders. Still, everyone agreed that the human's actions had prevented disaster. When the vote concluded, the verdict was announced. The Gravian's representative would face trial under interstellar law, and measures would be taken to prevent similar plots in the future. The decision balanced justice with caution, ensuring the court's stability while acknowledging human contribution. Elena turned her attention back to Ambassador Zathara. He smiled faintly at her, a rare display of warmth. Captain, you have not only saved me, but you have preserved the integrity of this court. Humans are indeed remarkable. Elena allowed herself a small smile. We do what is necessary. That is all. The ambassador nodded, his voice serious. The council has decided to offer you and your team honorary positions within the Grand Court. It is unusual, but your actions have shown that humans are capable of contributing in ways we never anticipated. Elena's expression remained calm, but inwardly she felt a quiet pride. Humans had often been dismissed, underestimated, and overlooked. Yet here, in the heart of an alien empire, their abilities had earned recognition not through force, but through intelligence, courage, and moral clarity. Over the following days, Elena worked with the court to secure sensitive areas, establish monitoring protocols, and advise on potential threats. Her human perspective, focused on observation, reasoning, and anticipation, proved invaluable. Delegates began consulting her on security, logistics, and even diplomacy. The Grand Court, once rigid and hierarchical, had begun to change subtly. Humans had demonstrated that unpredictability, when paired with reasoning and courage, could shift outcomes in ways no alien technology or tradition could predict. Elena noted the change quietly, knowing that this was the beginning of a new era. One evening, she walked through the chambers alone, reflecting on the events. The neurochemical attack had been a warning, a test, and perhaps a message from hidden powers within the court. But humanity had met it head-on. They had acted decisively, observed carefully, and solved problems that others could not. Elena paused by a window overlooking the floating platforms. The stars stretched endlessly beyond, a reminder of the vastness of the universe. Humans were few, far from home, and often underestimated, but they were capable of remarkable things. And in situations where others faltered, humans thrived. She thought about the future. The Grand Court had seen a glimpse of human ingenuity, but the galaxy was vast, full of challenges, conspiracies, and threats. Humanity's role would continue to grow, not because of aggression or power, but because of reasoning, courage, and adaptability. The next day, the council convened again. Delegates formally acknowledged the contributions of the humans. Captain, Elena Rios and her team were commended for their courage, precision, and insight. Humans, once seen as peripheral participants, were now recognized as capable and reliable partners in interstellar affairs. Elena accepted the recognition quietly. She did not seek glory, only the satisfaction of knowing that her actions had prevented disaster and upheld justice. Humans were not conquerors, not aggressors. They were observers, problem solvers, and guardians of truth. As the council adjourned, Elena looked around the chamber. Delegates moved with renewed caution, aware that humans were not to be underestimated. The Gravian's representative had been apprehended, the neurochemical threat neutralized, and the court's integrity preserved. But the lesson lingered. Humans saw what others missed, acted when others hesitated, and had a courage that was both practical and unyielding. Captain Elena Rios stood tall, a quiet symbol of human capability in a galaxy that often underestimated her species. She had solved a mystery, exposed a conspiracy, and shown that humans were more than guards. They were thinkers, strategists, and moral arbiters. The Grand Court of the Zephyrians would never forget the day a human solved a crisis that could have torn the Empire apart. And as Elena prepared to return to her duties, she knew one truth would endure. Humans survived and thrived because they observed, reasoned, and acted with courage. No alien protocol, no advanced technology, no centuries of tradition could match the combination of intellect and heart that humans brought to the galaxy. Elena smiled faintly. Humanity had made its mark, and this was only the beginning.